Hindsight Rewrites, where we dive into some B movies or lesser known movies and just play with them a little, do a little this, do a little that. If you'd like an overview of some of the criteria I use on these rewrites, go check out the intro video, which is on the channel, and then come on back. Today we're going to be doing part 2 of The Last Sect, 2006 film, Canadian production. If you'd like more info on the background of this film, go check out part 1, and then we will dive into part 2. Like with part 1, if you'd like more of a traditional type review of this film, go check out Water Cooler Films. They have one on their channel. I will leave a link in the description. We left off part 1 with the professor finishing up a tale about the history of the vampires that date back to ancient Greece, and identifying this group as the titular Last Sect, and their matriarch is Anna. From a close-up on Anna, we dissolve to the Artemis sign-up page, and if you remember from part 1, Sydney was in her living room debating on whether to sign up or not. She was looking at the pamphlet. So here we have her at her computer getting ready to sign up, and we get this insert shot of her end of the sign-up process as she's filling out her information. So here we have a transition to a hand on a keyboard, but it ends up not being Sydney. It's actually Anna on her end of the computer at her office, watching Sydney sign up, like in live time, monitoring that. And she's looking at the same insert shot, which is of Sydney having the icon hovering over the Seeking a Man option, but hasn't clicked it yet. We come back to Sydney, who is drinking a little bit, trying to get some liquid courage, let's say. She's always looked for men, she's always dated men, but she's just not sure anymore. So what the hell, she moves the icon and clicks the woman option. Then we get back to her after doing that, just, with her finger up there on her lips, just very, we'll say curious as she's continuing her little sign up. And then we get a mirroring shot of Anna doing the same thing in her office with her finger up on her lips. Just a very, where they're kind of connected is what we're trying to establish here. Here we get like an over the shoulder of Sydney finishing up her sign in, and then we'll get a close-up of her hand on the mouse as she's about to click to finalize everything. Then another insert of her icon on the submit, and it clicks it, as you can see, with them little ripple around the heart there. And we cut back to Anna, who just watched this and is quite pleased. Anna continues to watch the screen, relishing in what just happened. She's then approached by one of her sect, who asks if she is the one. Anna looks up and replies, yes. And that fades us to the professor's residence once again. So there's a nice bit of audio that I'm going to be playing for you that has the professor explaining the vessel a little bit. But we're going to do a couple little changes on what he was saying in the original film, so we'll cover that now, which in the film he calls it every millennium that they have to get a vessel to go into their deep sleep. We're going to go every 100, 150 years, something to that nature, because what we're having with our vampires is that they don't bite people to turn them. What it is every 100 or so years, like we mentioned, their vessel watches over them for the deep sleep and everything, and then becomes part of the sect. So that's how you become a vampire. You do your duty as a vessel first, and then you become part of the sect as a vampire. The professor suggests that they've come a little more in the open with this Artemis thing, this dating service thing, because they're desperate to seek out the one who can be the vessel, one that can actually handle their power. Not everybody can, as well as seeking out or culling prime feeding options among the male population. Some will end up food, some will end up as like ghouls to be their bodyguards.
Vampires must regenerate themselves. Excessium quiesco, literally a deep sleep.
Hibernation.
More or less. Lasts for something on the order of 25 years. Their powers are at their greatest in the weeks and months preceding this regeneration.
To what end? I mean, if you're already at your strongest, why would you need to regenerate?
Because, though their powers are at their peak, they themselves are at their most vulnerable. And living forever requires resources. If this is supposed to ensure their future, then they will need some person to look after it, won't they? This person is a repository for their living energy. It has to be a woman, a vessel who will carry their collective seed while the sect sleeps. As their cycle nears its end, they have precious little time to find this individual, and they cannot take her by force, as they do their victims. They must convince her to become their protector. She must do this willingly, of her own volition. When and if this woman agrees, the sect will literally disappear. They remain invulnerable for the entire duration of their sleep.
We cut back to Tom, who asks the professor if they're gonna go after the Artemis now, guns blazing type thing. Professor's like, no, it's not quite the time for that yet. I'm gonna call a friend and see if he can check out the place for us, get some pictures, so we know what we're dealing with. Back at Sydney's, she's sleeping on the couch. I'm not sure whether they had access to the apartment's bedroom or not. We're always seeing her on the couch, and that's fine. So we'll go with that. So she's sleeping on the couch, and she's having a vivid dream or memories, whatever you want to call it, of her interactions with Anna at the interview. And these memories of Anna's gaze and her just look in general, and along with that kind of half vision that she had of the two lips of women kissing, has her a little, squirming around on the couch there, and she eventually wakes up half undressed and very, very confused. This cuts to a close-up of the relic, which is now starting to light up, and we get the professor doing a voiceover saying they found her. We dissolve from the relic to Sydney at her office, and she's just doing some work on the article when she's approached by Sam.
Artemis! I joined last night. I swear to God, I got my screening tomorrow.
Your what?
My screening. You have to have a physical, blood test, the works. I mean, they verify all your banking info, make sure you work where you say you do, all that.
Are you insane?
What? I got nothing to hide.
Seriously, doesn't that bother you in the least? How much information these people want on you?
No, makes sense. No, to me, anyway. I mean, look, the good thing is when you meet somebody, you know right away that they're telling you the truth. You'd think a woman would appreciate that.
I guess.
Anyway, I'm out of here.
Hey, Sam!
Yo,
Do you have the...
check your inbox, Spaz. Do you not read any of my emails?
Oh, not unless I'm gonna see boobs.
File's called Anna.
Thanks, Sam.
When Sydney goes to open the email that Sam mentioned, she gets a message alert from Artemis, and it turns out to be a message what appears to be from Anna with just an address and a time. Sydney stares at the message intently, putting her fingers up by her lips like we seen her do earlier, and that dissolves to the exterior of the Artemis building with this guy standing there just kind of hanging around. As women exit the building, this guy, who's called Karpov, takes pictures with this little glasses camera to see on whether the women put up a warm signature or a cold one. These particular women put off a warm signature, so he goes back to pretending he's doing something to avoid attention. When Anna and another woman exit the building, Karpov again uses his glasses to take their picture. This time, they set off a cold signature indicating to him that they are vampires. We hold on that photo briefly before going to a cityscape shot at night. So we got our thumbs down guy here, and it's because we have these dream sequences between Anna and Sydney in this white room, and I just don't like the being the dream stuff all the time. I don't mind Anna having the power to do that, creep into Sydney's dream and all that, but I think I'd rather have them do like a physical, actual date, via the Artemis service as well as their previous interaction at the interview, where Anna's trying to woo her, so to speak, to eventually get her to be the vessel. So we have our establishing again here of the city, and that transitions to this white room, which is similar to the one that we cut out of there because it's just playing with the photos a little bit. And we put in this painting of roses behind there just to make it look more like they're in a restaurant, like a back VIP room or something. And Sydney is just telling Anna how she's not usually into like the dating services and things like that, and why, she's just curious why Anna messaged her. And Anna was like, well, I'd be kind of a hypocrite if I didn't use my own service. So Sydney's a little nervous and continues to tell Anna more about like how she doesn't really like dating services. She hasn't had a lot of luck with them in the past, and she finds them quite impersonal. Anna says that she agrees and she can see how some people see it like that, but she views it more as a useful tool to get to know someone at a safe distance. Sydney retorts with the idea that she has, which is that she's a little old-fashioned and prefers face-to-face communication. Anna puts her hand across the table and on top of Sydney's and says, to be honest, so do I. And we get this very, eye lock look that they both had with the handshake, but even a little more intense as they're staring at each other back and forth with their hands touching on the table. So we hold on Sydney's eyes, and that dissolves to the professor's home as he and Tom are going over the photos that Karpov sent them.
No. 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 Wait. Zoom in on that one. Give me the phone. Now.
We cut to this hallway where we hear a distant phone ringing, and from there we come inside this little apartment where Karpov is answering the phone. It's the professor telling him that he has identified the matriarch and to go there and take her and the rest of the sect out. We cut back to the office where Sam is on the computer doing what looks like work, but when Luke approaches him, it turns out it's not work. Sam is actually scrolling through his matches and so forth on the Artemis website. Luke is asking him about it a little bit, and Sam's telling him this is not just research for the article. He's actually, looking through to maybe actually utilize the website, and he gets an alert of somebody that wants to meet him that night. Back at Sydney's apartment, she and Anna's date has been over for a little while. Anna didn't really push the envelope too much. They had dinner and kind of ended it a little after that. So Sydney's back at her place, kind of giving the details or how it went with Jess here. Jess is still quite surprised that Sydney went out with a woman and asked how it was. Was it different than going out with a guy, things like that. So Sydney starts talking about Anna and how she's kind of starting to feel about her, and Jess is kind of razzing her a little about, just like you would with somebody who has a schoolyard crush. And Sydney's like, come on, I'm serious. It's really confusing. We cut to Artemis, where Karpov has arrived to carry out the professor's instructions. He goes into the office and is approached from behind by one of the vampires. She rushes him and he dodges it. He then pulls out like this needle that he has dipped in venom or something like that, because as soon as he strikes the woman with it, she falls down dead. So we do a quick cut from the action at the office back to Sydney's apartment, where Jess is now being a little more understanding about everything, and she reassures Sydney that you shouldn't be too confused. It doesn't really matter, man or woman. If you're feeling a certain way for someone, you shouldn't let either of those things, what they are or who they are, get in the way of that. Just pursue the feeling and see what happens. So Sydney thanks her friend for the kind words, and they share a little bit of a hug before Jess takes off and Sydney lays down for the night. Back at the office, Karpov is approached by two more vampire women. He pulls out a gun and takes them out fairly easily with wooden bullets. With the matriarch nowhere in sight, Karpov gets what information he can from the office, and he heads out so that he can report to the professor. Now, in the original, Sam ends up as a victim on the vampire web, but since we cut the vampire web, we're having him go on that date, or we're seeing the tail end of that date that we saw him get the message for at the office. So we get this exterior shot of a cheap-looking motel. We go to inside, where the woman from Sam's fantasy is standing in front of the bed, and she asks, so, are you ready to make that fantasy a reality? We cut to him on the other side of the room, where he's looking her over, and he just says, yes, I'm ready. We dissolve from Sam to Sydney's apartment, where somebody is knocking on her door.
Hello? Hello? Sydney? Sydney, Sam. May I come in? Sydney. You have to invite me in. Please. Come in.
They then get a little closer once they get inside further, and Sydney is just clearly very, very nervous, and it says, I had to see you again. I just hope it's okay. And Sydney, again, they're both breathing very hard, and she's like, yes. And then they embrace in a kiss. The kiss dissolves into more intimate activity with them on the couch, and as being quite gentle, with Sydney becoming more and more receptive, less nervous, and after one of their deeper kisses, Sydney notices a little blood on her lip, and that holds and fades to an establishing of the city the next morning. The professor is tending to some minor wounds that Karpov got during his encounter at Artemis, where he's further explaining that he could not find the matriarch anywhere. The professor is none too happy about this, having wanted to deal with the matriarch now instead of later, but Karpov assures him that they do have some good news, and he tells him that he found some files on the matriarch's computer that will lead them to the woman they're targeting as the vessel. This, of course, turns out to be a photograph of Sydney, as well as information on her about where she works, her phone number, her address. The professor examines all of this carefully. He's like, well, that's the next best thing. If we find the target, we'll find the matriarch. We cut to Sydney's apartment, where the phone is ringing and ringing and ringing. Sydney wakes up having a night of fun with Anna. However, Anna is nowhere to be found while the phone continues to ring. Sydney looks a little bit to see if she can see Anna elsewhere in the apartment, but then ultimately gets up to go answer the phone. So Sydney answers the phone. It turns out to be the professor, who introduces himself as Professor Smith, and he tells her that she is in danger from the Artemis people, that he has been looking into them for some time, and she has been targeted for something special with them, that she needs protection. Now, he's being very vague about the danger. He's not throwing out the V word, the vampire word, because he's learned in the past that that will put people off. But he's telling her, stay put, we'll be there in a little bit, me and my associates, and we can help you with this danger. So even though she's been critical of Artemis before, her new feelings for Anna have given her a blind spot, and she just shoots back at the professor. Well, you know what? I don't think they're dangerous. I think maybe you're dangerous. I don't even know you. How'd you even get this number? Still refusing to tell her about vampires, he still is quite persistent, telling her, no, you are in danger. You really need to listen to me. You really need to wait for us to come and help you. The professor waits for a response, but he doesn't get one. Miss St. James? Miss St. James, are you there? We cut back to Sydney's apartment, where the phone lies hung up and Sydney is gone. Our shot of the phone slowly dissolves to Sydney at Artemis, coming to warn or speak to Anna about the phone call, but she can't find anyone, but the door to the office is open, so she goes inside and looks around and eventually ends up at the computer. So in the original film, Sydney actually sees images of herself along with some profiles of men next to like missing persons articles, and I don't really like that. I mean, Anna, does have a lot of stuff on her computer, but I highly doubt she would keep that kind of incriminating crap, even on her own computer. So we're just gonna not do that. So here's another thumbs down guy, and this was originally a vampire web clip, and then I was gonna maybe use it as a security camera clip that Sydney's seeing while she's messing around on the computer. But either of those I don't really like, because I don't want Sydney to see Sam being taken out in Artemis by the larger group. He is eventually taken, we know that, with the fantasy girl and date that he was on. But that is something that Anna can justify, that was that woman acting on her own outside of Artemis. Otherwise, Sydney, if she knew that Anna had any hand in Sam, probably wouldn't agree to do anything as far as being a vessel. So Sydney still finds some security camera footage of a couple members of the sect feeding on a male victim, but this time it's just a regular random dude who later Anna can justify as a degenerate or a criminal. In any event, Sydney is still quite shocked by what she's seen on the screen. In the original film, they have Sydney go back and forth between Artemis and her apartment after she's seen, on the video screen, the feedings and everything. I'd rather have her stay at Artemis. I don't like this where she goes back to her apartment for a drink and then circles back to Artemis. I'd rather she just stays in the building to go search for Anna, so we're getting rid of this where she goes back to her apartment. She finds her way downstairs at Artemis and is just kind of walking around, figuring it out, and she finds this special room with this little altar type thing, and she's just very confused and meanders in to kind of take a look at it. While she's in there looking at the altar, she is approached by one of the male ghouls, and she is very freaked out, obviously, and falls down. As the ghoul is approaching her, it all of a sudden stops and turns like somebody else is there. So in the original, this is Karpov, who, like Sydney, kind of circled back to Artemis, and then he goes back to where the professor's at. So we're not having that be Karpov here. We're actually going to have it be Anna, who comes in and she takes out the ghoul, but this causes Sydney to scream and run away. So we get a shot of Anna watching Sydney run away, and that dissolves to the city at night, but now painted in the light of the blood moon. We come back to the professor and Tom and Karpov as they're getting ready to go face the sect, and more specifically the matriarch. We then cut to an establishing shot of Sydney's door at her apartment, and she's inside on the phone with Jess, telling her that she wants to get out of town. They need to get out of town. Jess can come with her, and she's just, very frantic. Right after Sydney gets off the phone with Jess, who tells her that she would come over so they could talk, She sees Anna, who's teleported in there basically, but can do so because she's already been invited to the home.
Jesus. Hello, Sydney.
How did you get in here?
Are you going somewhere?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
I feel like I'm losing my mind.
You're not losing your mind, Sydney. Far from it.
I don't understand any of this.
Understanding's not important. Being true to your calling is.
So Anna embraces Sydney in a deep kiss that gives her these blurred kind of flashes of the story we were told earlier about the origin, but she is conveying that to Sydney through her mental powers, but we're also seeing it visually instead of it having to be told to us orally yet again. In the original, Sam shows up at the apartment and chloroforms Sydney. We're not doing that, so that's a cut. Thumbs down, guy. It's gone. So instead, we're going to hold on this passionate yet very informative kiss that will then fade into our hunters arriving at Artemis, where the professor tells Tome to kind of hold back and be more of a lookout. He's not ready to fully face the vampires yet, but to definitely be on the watch for them. We cut to a series of images here that show that Sydney is now on that altar, and she has been dressed in a fancy dress, fancy shoes, and so on. And she's just been fully drained, not of blood, but like just exhausted by that huge info dump into her mind from that kiss that they had at the apartment. As Sydney starts to come to, Anna comes over to greet her and help her down from the altar.
You're safe now. There isn't much time. Everything will be better than you could possibly imagine. Your life will be all that you ever wanted.
Your life will be over. Make no mistake, Sydney. This demon cares nothing for you. Our own survival is all that matters.
Anna engages with the professor while ordering the ghouls to come aid her in dealing with the intruders. As the ghouls come out, Sydney kind of backs away and eventually runs away back out into the main hallway. Karpov rushes to aid the professor with Anna until Sam comes out to engage Karpov. He's now obviously fully a ghoul. In the hallway, Tom has stopped Sydney and is looking her over for bites. He fails to see the bite that we know is on her lip because it's hidden with lipstick. With the professor and Karpov busy with the ghouls, Anna has slipped away and now takes care of Tom. She doesn't kill him, she just tosses him aside like a rag doll away from Sydney. Anna points out to Sydney that she spared the boy because that is not the kind of guys that they go after. Instead, they go after criminals and degenerates. While she's making her pitch, the professor shows up and says, "She is an abomination. Do not join her." Two members of the sect rush the professor, giving Sydney and Anna a window to get back to that main room where the altar is at. When the professor has dispatched the sect members, he goes to check on Tom, who's mostly fine, just a little shaken up, a little banged up, and he tells the professor she hasn't been bitten. He asks, "Are you sure?" And Tom nods, "Yes, I'm sure." We cut to a showdown between Karpov and Anna in the main altar room, and I love this scene because it basically displays, even though we've seen Karpov dispose of these other vampires fairly easily, he is not even close to a match for the matriarch. Anna quickly and very easily handles and kills Karpov with his own little poison spike or poison needle that he's been using on the other vampires. On the other side of the room, Sydney has found Sam, sees that he has been turned to a ghoul. She's like, "I thought you said you only go after degenerates and criminals." He was a weird pervert, but he wasn't either of those things. Anna ensures Sydney that she had ordered her sect to leave Sam alone. He did not fit their normal criteria for a victim. Sydney does not quite believe this. She refuses to take Anna's hand right away. And Anna says, "Please, trust me. Believe me. I didn't know that that member of my sect had drawn him away to that hotel and taken him out like that. If I would have, I would have dealt with her. As it turns out, she's been dealt with by the hunters." Sydney eventually looks deep into Anna's eyes and realizes that she's telling the truth. I also want to make sure that we leave it a little ambiguous for the audience. Is Anna telling the truth about not really wanting to go after Sam or not? I kind of like that little open-ended type stuff. But in any event, Sydney looks deep into Anna's eyes and believes what she was just told. Someone who does not believe her story is the professor, who shows up to have a final confrontation with Anna. With Karpov before him, the professor is no match for Anna, and he falls pretty quickly against the altar. In the original, it's actually a scream or yell from Sydney that distracts Anna and allows the professor to stake her. Here, I want it to be just that Anna has been kind of toying with him, messing with him quite a bit, because she's enjoying torturing the person who has hunted her, or the family that has hunted her and her sect for many, many years. But in this hubris, she gives an opening for the professor to have a Hail Mary attempt and shove a stake into her heart. This is where we will get Sydney to cry out for Anna after she has been staked. The professor tries to get up, but he's been tossed around quite a bit by Anna, so he's unable to do so. But we get Tome show up, unlike in the original where we didn't really see him after he got tossed around in the hallway. So he shows up and says, "I'll help you, Professor." Professor is not satisfied with staking Anna. We have to ensure the job is done. We have to kill the vessel. Seeing Anna on the ground and thinking that Sydney has not been bitten, Tome will not cross that line. "I'm sorry, Professor. I just can't do that. Come on, let's get you to the hospital." So here's our thumbs down guy again, and that's because in the original, the professor basically walks away from this more or less unscathed, and obviously we don't want that. We want him to have the shit beat out of him, and he's being helped away by Tome. We also don't want this where he gives them this divine, act of kindness. Instead, he'll look down at the crumpled bits of the relic, realize that the sect is destroyed, or think it is anyway, agree with Tome, and allow himself to be helped out to get medical assistance. Sydney watches the pair leave, then turns back to Anna and gently removes the stake. "I hope it's not too late. I hope it's not too late." Anna opens her eyes and softly whispers, "It's not." From there, Sydney leans down and gives Anna a deep, passionate kiss. We cut to the seemingly destroyed relic as the stone from the center begins to glow, and we fade to black. In the original, we have this scene at the professor's residence where he and Tome are just kind of hanging out, and they get these knocks on the door, and it turns out to be Sydney, who's standing in front of that painting we noted earlier that's supposed to represent the vessel. We're not going to be doing that. We're going to go a different route, so this old ending is gone. So we come back to when our stones started to glow again, and we fade to black, and we hold on that for a little bit. Then we come back in to Sydney, her back to us, staring off at the skyline of the city. She then turns towards the camera. All of this, of course, while the music begins to swell and rolls us into the end credits. So as I mentioned before, I've watched this movie a number of times. I enjoy it quite a bit, as is, but as we do with all of our favorite movies, there's always that little bit here and that little bit there that you wanted to play with. Of course, the vampire web things and some of the other, small little aspects, and maybe want to expand on the lore. I love that they had the Artemis in there, and that gave us a window to kind of play with the Greek mythology end of vampires a little bit more than always dealing with the European ones. I love the European ones. I love Dracula and all the rest of it. But I like to play with some of the other lore a bit sometimes too, and this gave us kind of a window for that with the movie naturally already having the Artemis elements in there. And I also wanted to play up the whole it's the last sect and, with the Artemis thing. Because they mention sect a bunch of times, but now we know why and how they're the last sect. And that's some changes that I like that we did in here. So, in closing, I would recommend this movie if you're not looking for a fast paced underworld type thing. If you like that kind of slower build, that slower methodical type stuff, it does pick up. You do get some fight scenes towards the back end of the movie, and them are great. And I like the expanded lore, even if it's not quite what was in our rewrite. It's still an expanded with the whole vessel thing. I kind of like that. So, all in all, I would give it a watch. Like I said, I found it on IMBD TV most recently, but it's been on a number of other streaming services. It's been on Tubi and Amazon and Hulu. So just look around, check it out, and I'm sure you'll at least get some enjoyment out of it. Again, if you're not looking for some, knockdown, drag out action film. So as always, just like, comment, subscribe. It really helps us out to build the channel. Go check out the Patreon if you like. And again, as we've always said, if you don't want to, that's cool as well, no problem. And I will see you all next time on Hindsight Rewrites.